Hey everyone, I'm Ryan McInerney of the Church Planting Network. I'm here with Casey Cleveland and John O'Brien. We're good friends, planting a church in Delray Beach, Florida called the Avenue Church. So how do we get to a point where we now have a new church plant in Delray? What's the story behind that?
I was sitting next to a guy, shaved head, 2 full sleeves of tattoos, talking about the recovery business. And I'm not really an extrovert, but I just felt prompted to ask, what is that? And I said, so hey, I overheard you talking about recovery business. What is that? And he went on to explain to me that he manages these 40 or 50 guys, make sure that they get jobs and are doing the right things, so to speak, according to recovery terms. He said, well, what do you do? And I told him, I'm a pastor, I'm prepping the sermon. He asked me, well, what is that? And so I got to tell him, who I was and what Spanish River was, and just sort of my heart for people and my heart for God. And he said, well, why don't you come on out? I said, okay. Figured God was opening a door, I should walk through it. And so I showed up at 10 o'clock, and he introduced me with quite a few expletives and interesting language that I've never been introduced before, but I loved it. Basically it was, you fill in the blanks are here because of your best decisions, and some of you have turned your back on what he called religion. Well, this guy's here to help if you're open to that. Fast forward, I just keep showing up, building relationships. Before I know it, I start thinking, if this is what God's doing through one person, what could he do through a community of people? I talked to John, we talked to a few other people, we start going. Again, it was just consistent relationship, which led to rides to church, sharing the gospel. And before you know it, we were full-fledged into a ministry that we had no idea that God would open up.
God definitely pushed me into Delray. God always has to push me into roles, and then I find myself there and he provides. So that's how it happened. And actually, I've been delivered out of addictions. It's been about 10.5 years.
So what is the mission of the Avenue Church? Who are you trying to reach, and how do you plan on doing that? John, you're the missions pastor, right? Mm-hmm. So that's your answer.
I'll begin with a quote since it'll keep me guided. Christopher J.H. Wright said that it's not so much that God has a mission for his church as he has a church for his mission. And so just getting out of the way and being his instrument, knowing that he's going to build his church no matter what. And he's called me to be a part of it, and that's an amazing, liberating, awesome thing. And so to just take it seriously, to take Christ seriously, and then to get out of the way and watch what he does and just show up and go out and take risks and go to people in the community. Casey led the way, asking, how can we serve this community? And that's our goal, is to go to different places and ask, how can we serve you? And then show up and show people the love of Christ. Enter their world, walk alongside them, build redemptive relationships, and expect God to move however he wants to. But we're going to show up. And I'd say that's the beginning. And then earn the right to get to share the gospel, because people have a lot of misconceptions about what the church is, and a lot of it's well-founded. And so just not defending the church, defending Christ, and then letting us become the church so that people see that Christ is for real, that this is a move of God, and that would be the beginning steps, I would think.
I see Delray as being comprised of several demographics. You've got a strong recovery demographic, you've got a strong Haitian demographic, you have a strong African American demographic, young families, people seeking after their career, all these sorts of things, a retired demographic. And what I believe God is calling us there to build is his household, that Ephesians 2 household where the gospel has just broken down the walls between the young families and those in recovery. And now people who would have never crossed paths are sitting at the same table calling each other family. That doesn't happen. It doesn't happen anywhere else outside the confines of the gospel. You will see a form of it in AA meetings. You will see a form of it on Friday night on the actual avenue, Delray Beach, Atlantic Avenue. Everybody's going out. You'll see a form of it in places, but those are so secular, they're not eternal, they're not lasting, and there's no life transformation that comes from those that's lasting. And we know the power's in the gospel. I mean, I'm a product of Spanish River Church, where I heard the gospel every week, very clearly presented, the bad news of my sin and the fact that I'm going to stand before a righteous God, and he's going to have to punish my sin because of his justice. And I can't do anything about it. I mean, 30 years I've heard that. And in 30 years I've heard the good news. The fact that Christ came, born of the Virgin Mary, no sin nature, went to the cross, took upon my sins, the price I should have paid the penalty that I should have paid, atoned for my wrongdoing, suffered the wrath of God for me.
So Casey, you guys are planting out of Spanish River Church. They're your sending church. Spanish River has a couple thousand members. It's fairly secure here, right? I mean, you'd think this is probably what most guys are looking forward to in ministry careers, and you're leaving it. You're leaving it all behind. That's got to be scary, yeah?
Yeah, terrifying is probably a better word than scary. A couple things come to mind when I think about some of the fears that I have worked through and am currently working through. One is the fact that, I feel like I've been given so much here. This is my family. I've been well trained. I'm a product of Spanish River. And now it's time. And so throw in the fact that I'm a people pleaser and, selfish at times, prideful at times, all those things mix in, you can get a pretty big ball of fear rolling in that mix. The other thing that's been fearful for me is what does that mean for my family? It's nice and comfortable here, but out there, you fall down. You go into the darkness. We're called to go into the darkness. I understand that completely. The light works best in the darkness, but that's where you get hurt and injured. And in my sense, I have such a heart for my family that I realize that when I get scraped up and I get bruised and broken, so does my family. And for me to think about walking my family into the darkness with me, I have a full understanding of the implications that go along with that. So it really took me a while to work through the fact that, yes, this is what God has called not just me, but my wife and my children too as well.
John?
You are the light of the world. So each time I step out of my door, I am the light of the world. When people look at me, they're supposed to see Christ. And that's a huge responsibility. And so I find myself constantly reminding myself of my identity in Christ and being thankful for the Word. Because I always feel like I have to perform and achieve and have everything together and be perfect. And I'm not any of those things. And actually, that's not what the New Testament says you're supposed to be. It says that actually the jar of clay that has the most cracks will display God's glory the most. And so I can actually rejoice in my weakness. I can boast in my failures and in my character flaws. But at the same time, it's walking in tension because as someone who's been given much, much is expected. And I'm called to embody the gospel.
And oftentimes I find myself asking the question, what do I have to offer these people? I don't have the same stories that will wow people. I don't have the history that other people do. I don't have even some of the markings, that life before Christ brings to some people. And it's at those moments that God always just humbles me, brings me back to the foot of the cross, and just says, it's not about you. It's just not about you. It's not your church. It's not your job to build it. I will build it, he promises. And so just being able to be humble enough to remember that it's not what I bring to it. It's what he's called us to and what he's going to deliver on.
So you guys are co-planting together, but you're the lead pastor, right? That means you're number 2. What does that feel like?
Awesome. I'm 26 years old. I'm young, and knowing my weaknesses, knowing that I still have so much to learn, it's just really exciting to be able to partner with somebody else. And God has thrown us into this, and every day it becomes more evident how he's done exactly what he's done for a reason. And so it's an adventure, and it's exciting, and it's not about me. It's all about the kingdom.
So what would you guys say are the biggest challenges in getting this church off the ground?
I think one of the biggest challenges would be just time management. There's no question that this guy and myself would work 24 hours a day if we could, if it was biblical, if we were called to, because we have it's all we talk about. We call each other on the phone and we leave we were yelling at the end of the conversation. We're so amped at what's going on. So it's not a matter of desire, it's a matter of wisdom and trying to figure out where would be the best place to strategically place the hours that we can place. And so it's all the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few, so it's raising up workers. It's also, in my particular case, leading a family, going home and not turning it off. I have a tendency to see home as a refuge, so when the car turns off, when the minivan turns off, and I walk through the door, it's like I was on all day, and now I get to be, but no, I don't want to give my children and my wife my leftovers. You know how Malachi says, quit giving me your leftovers. I don't want your leftovers. I want your best. And so it's been a real intentional shift for me to go home and amp up and be just as good or even better for my 5 and 8-year-old and my wife as I was for the people that I was trying to introduce to Jesus Christ. So that's been a challenge.
Biggest challenges?
Time management and time management. He said it perfectly.
What would you say is the greatest joy in this church plant that you've had?
For me, it's seeing the vision become a reality. It's seeing walls be broken down. People come together with different stories to form the family of Christ. But the vehicle for that is unequivocally the gospel of Jesus Christ. The bad news of my sin, the good news of Christ's redemption of it. And so, as I shared before, I'm a product of Spanish River. And the Spanish River is a product of the power of the gospel. And so that seed continues to grow and grow and grow. And we see life change, we see walls come down, we see a real community that's lasting based on the gospel. So when the gospel hits in real life terms, and you get to see that community form.
And watching people catch that passion for God, seeing their lives change, seeing the look in their eyes, seeing them ask for Bible studies in secular halfway houses, seeing them stand up to people in a loving manner to defend Jesus when they're being ridiculed is amazing. 1 week after they've heard the gospel.
But the thing to me that overwhelmed me was as we went through the response card, there was a place there for today I trust Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And we saw 18 people respond in that way. And the fact that we get to do this on a daily basis is thrilling.
Amazing. Coolest thing ever.
Life change? Death to life? What else is there?